Bonjour à toutes et à tous et
Hello and
bienvenue dans
welcome to the
l'entretien de
France
France
24
24. Les
interview.
scandales
Sexual
sexuels
abuse
dans l'Église
scandals
catholique
within
ont
the
provoqué
Catholic
beaucoup
Church
de
have
remous à
caused
travers le monde,
tremendous
y compris en
turmoil
France, à
the world
Lyon
over,
notamment.
including in
Après avoir été
France,
condamné à 6
in
mois de
Lyon
prison
in
avec sursis
particular.
pour ne pas avoir
After having been
signalé les
handed
agissements
down a
pédocriminels d'un
6-month
prêtre,
conditional
le
sentence for
responsable
having failed
hiérarchique, l'archevêque
to
Barbarin, a
report
été
cases
relaxé
of
en appel
clerical
fin janvier.
sexual
Il a
abuse,
finalement
Archbishop
démissionné en mars et sa
Barbarin had
succession
his
est
case
ouverte.
dismissed by
Il
the
y a
Court of
quelques jours,
Appeals
une
at the end
femme
of
vient de se
January.
porter
He finally
candidate, la
resigned in
théologienne
March
Anne
and must now
Soupa.
be
Elle est
replaced.
notre
A
invitée.
few days ago,
Madame
woman
Soupa,
Madame
bonjour et
Soupa
merci beaucoup d'être
applied to
avec nous.
succeed him. She is our guest today.
Alors, il y a peu ou pas de chances que votre
There
candidature soit
are,
retenue parce qu'il faut avoir
it's
été
unlikely
prêtre
that
pour être
your
nommé archevêque.
application
Or,
will
cette
go
fonction est
through
réservée aux
because you're
hommes.
supposed to be a
Pourquoi,
priest before you
malgré tout,
become
vous
an
postulez?
archbishop, and that's close to women. Why are you applying?
I'm running for office because I don't accept that this ban be permanent until the end of time. 50% of humanity is being excluded from decision-making positions within their own church, and I find it interesting to ask why not have a woman archbishop? Why
Alors,
not?
sur quel texte,
Okay,
dans
so
la Bible ou le
what
Nouveau
parts of
Testament en
Scripture
particulier
or
reposent
the
cette
New
position?
Testament do you base your stance on?
I have done a lot of work on the issue of women in biblical texts. I have even written 2 books on the subject, and my conviction is based on the famous part of the Bible that deals with the creation of man and woman, the book of Genesis, in which God, the Creator, models a human being out of clay and calls it Adam. The male-dominated culture in which we live has wanted to see Adam as male, but the Hebrew tradition disagrees. Adam simply means a human being. My conclusion is that men and women were created at the same time, and they were created as equals. That's something the Jewish tradition has always kept in mind. It's also something the Catholic tradition has forgotten. So much for the first aspect. Secondly, as a teacher and as a preacher, Jesus never made a distinction between men and women. He saw women as regular human beings. He never sent them home saying, "Make me a sandwich, woman." Jesus did not care about these things.
Alors, oui.
Yes?
He did choose 12 men, but the 12 men he chose represent the 12 tribes of Israel. In other words, Jesus chose everyone. He chose the entire people of Israel to represent him. And this is just the opposite of the idea according to which there is a chosen sex.
Le pape François en particulier, au début
Pope
de son mandat,
Francis,
a
at the
annoncé
beginning
une
of
meilleure
his
prise en
papacy,
considération des
said that
femmes
he
dans
wanted to
l'Église et
take
dans la
better account of
hiérarchie,
women
de
in the
l'Église.
church,
Des
in the
promesses qui n'ont pas
church's
véritablement
hierarchy.
été tenues.
But
D'après vous,
these
pourquoi?
promises were not
Quel
kept.
courant
Why?
bloque cette évolution?
Who's opposing change?
The Pope has requested a better distinction between governance and ordained ministry, because within the Catholic Church, the two go hand in hand. Only priests get to rule. In other words, only men get to rule. This means women are kept out of the Church's boardroom. So the Pope wants this to change, but nothing has been done in 7 years. If you'll allow me a bit of humor, I would say that my candidacy has been the only response to this call by the Pope. So why has the Pope not done more on this issue? I believe Pope Francis' efforts are being thwarted by currents within the Church, currents with a strong sense of identity, currents that seek a return to tradition. They want to go back to the good old-fashioned ways. They want to reinstate very conservative values that can be reassuring in a big, scary world that's hard to navigate. And I believe that Pope Francis has yet to walk the talk. The decision he's made about women over the past 7 years are very minor decisions. Yes, a handful of women have been appointed to high-level positions, but none within the governance structure of the Church.
In other words, he's playing into the hands of the conservatives. Over 7 years ago, I think 2008, you had made the headlines because you set up the Committee of the Skirt in response to misogynistic statements made by the then Archbishop of Paris. Do you have the feeling that in the meantime, change has happened, has started to happen? You're supported by a lot of Catholic women. They're young Catholic feminists who are taking your side. Do you have the feeling that the winds of change are sweeping in that direction?
First and foremost, I have to admit that very little has changed since 2008. We at the Committee of the Skirt have worked very hard to ensure better recognition of the role of women. We've developed a best practice charter. We introduced a conclave of women in 2013. We also supported the efforts of some parishes to include little girls in the choir service. However, we realize there is a strong, a powerful reactionary current, a current that bans women from higher office. If the movement that I'm starting through this candidacy is sparking such a reaction from women, it is because the problem is getting worse within the church. Women are invisible. Because of the glass ceiling, which is very hard to break, women are unable to access executive office within their own church, no matter how active they are. The church cannot operate without women. They keep the lights on.
Yes, absolutely. Women are very often known as the foot soldiers of the church, and they are much more observant than men. But what has maybe changed over the last 8 years is that the scandals of clerical sexual abuse have changed things. Do you have the feeling that more women would help turn that page and come back to better practices?
You're right. This is a very painful chapter in our history. Many women feel terrible about the damage, the terrible damage caused to vulnerable children by these predatory priests who abuse them. I, for one, firmly believe that sexual abuse thrives in self-segregated communities. Within the church, priests protect each other. Let's hope these days are over. Fingers crossed, but in the past, priests have always had each other's backs. So they've been slow to bring to justice one of their peers. They felt it was a step too difficult to take. I believe they did not realize how damaging this would be to the victims. So I am convinced that if new elements are injected into the community of priests, there will be less abuse. The more women access higher office, the fewer abuses within the church.
In some countries, in particular the US or in Ireland, a number of women have come to the forefront of the church, some are working as priests. Are you in contact with them? Is there a sort of international association of Catholic women?
This seems to be happening. I'm in touch with the Women's Ministry Network in Quebec, with a movement called Voice of Peace, with the female priest movement, and also the movement called Maria 2.0 in Germany. So at the moment, European and non-European movements are converging. They want things to change for women. I believe we are witnessing an awakening among women within the Catholic Church. They may not have a lot of visibility, but they are speaking up. And they have been denied a voice by a male-dominated church for so many generations. Being able to finally speak up is a very happy time.
In other countries, in Africa, things are changing. Are people responding to your ideas?
I have not heard recent reports from churches in Africa, but I do remember this heartbreaking documentary that aired on the Arte network regarding sexual abuse of African nuns, and I know that the investigative journalists took a while before they got the victims to trust them and to open up. So I believe it's going to take time before victims find their voices in Africa. I wouldn't be surprised if this took a long time.
Just to conclude, do you think women are the future of the Catholic Church?
Of course, women are the future of the Church. They bring fresh blood. It's so important for the Catholic Church, who has denied itself the contribution of half of humanity. It is very important for the Catholic Church to find a new lease of life, and women can help with that. And this is my call to all the Catholic women who would like to run for office, even if they're currently not allowed to do so. Go ahead, write your bishop, write the nuncio. Tell them, I am ready, I am capable, and I have the right to be here, and I hope they will be heard.
We'll be following up on all this, and we'll be following up on your application. Thank you so much, Madame Soupa, for having been with us. This is the end of the interview. Thanks to all of you for having watched. Stay tuned for more news.